Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to the Elevate Your Soul podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Nick Broadhurst, a singer, songwriter, former member of Sneaky Sound System, a meditation advocate, a visual artist, entrepreneur, polymath, performer, father, and husband. Who said you couldn't do it all, right? Today, I interview Nick on how to stay in a positive mindset and how to keep your vibration and frequency high when your partner is going through a depressing or a stressful and challenging time in their own life. We cover so many different topics, and Nick shares some of his relationship tools on how to deal with conflict, such as communication skills, staying positive, not to place expectations on your partner, and so much more. You can check out Nick's work on his website at iamnickbroadhurst.com, where you will find one of his latest singles called Breathe. And funny enough, one of his latest songs that is called Breathe, the lyrics are actually about this exact topic. So the song is actually about how when one partner is going through something challenging in life, the other partner is there to support and just hold space for their partner to go through this challenging time and express their emotions and just be there for the other person. And I will actually be playing a sample of his song Breathe just before we dive into the interview. You can check out Nick's song Breathe on Spotify or basically any music listening platform. He also has some really cool remixes out on his song Breathe. You can check that out, and all of the links for this are in the show notes. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast episode. Hello, Nick Broadhurst. Welcome to the Elevate Your Soul podcast.
Thank you for having me.
First question I have for you is, what elevates your soul?
Ooh, okay. Well, definitely at the moment with the coronavirus happening, it's made it more apparent how much I enjoy connection with people.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to still be able to connect digitally like we are right now, but the connection when you get to give someone a hug, a kiss, to hang out with people, that really elevates me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, the topic today kind of relates to what's going on right now with the corona and the self-isolation. So my question is, if you live with a partner and they're going through a dark or depressing or just stressful phase in their life, how do you stay in a positive mindset and in a high vibration when your partner is just stressed out and not doing well, and you try to help them and it's not working? How do you maintain your happiness in a situation like
I
that?
mean, this is something which personally Melissa and I have had to work on together. We've both had periods in our life where one of us has struggled with something. So for Melissa, it was losing her best friend. For me, it was going through a period of depression.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's an amazing question because, especially right now, people will be faced with a lot more time with their family, with their lover, and it intensifies anything that's happening internally for each person. And for me and Melissa personally, we've both gone through this period in our lives where we've individually, I guess, suffered.
Yeah.
And so for Melissa, it sort of was kickstarted by losing her best friend, somewhat unexpectedly, but we sort of knew to a degree because she had cancer. And then for me, it was a period of depression, a very sudden period. I'd never had experienced depression in my life.
Wow, really?
Um, I'd never really even I'd gone through a divorce and some health challenges,
Right.
but I'd never had been flat, like depressed. I'd felt anger and all these other emotions, but never depression. And the beginning of 2017, literally January 1st, 2017, I just dropped into a state of depression. And I stayed there for exactly 12 months to the day. It was so
Wow.
strange. Obviously there was something I needed to learn through that period. I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And there was different things contributing to why I went into that. But ultimately, regardless of the circumstances, It was something I personally had to experience to become a better person, to become a better musician, to become a better teacher. I just had to experience the full polarity of what humans can experience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Melissa and I have definitely had to work through this together.
Mm-hmm.
And we're by no means perfect at it. We struggle like any other couple when something like this happens. But we
Yeah.
definitely have some tools that have made a huge difference to our lives. And I think the first tool, which Melissa speaks about a lot in her book, Open Wide,
Yeah.
is a very, very simple saying. And the saying is, nothing good comes from closing.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're depressed, for example, it's very easy to close off, like
Yeah.
super easy, because depression really is a state of where you're completely, really just focused on yourself
Yeah.
with a small s. And nothing good comes from closing is amazing, because if you literally live by that rule, you'll see when someone's closing off and you'll know that one of you has to yield. One of you has to be the one who can step up and say, you know what? I'm not going to close. I'm going to be the one who works to open the other one up.
Yeah.
And you often see this even in bed. You go to sleep one night and one person's angry about something, or
Mm.
just grumpy, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and they may roll over and turn their back to their partner and pretend to go to sleep. um, and the other person can just lie there and think, okay, cool, I'm just gonna go to sleep too, and you can just let it go to the next day.
Yeah.
Or you can remember, nothing good comes from closing.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, one person is going to be more closed than the other.
Yep.
And one person can then make the choice to yield and to surrender their preferences in that moment. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, relationship, at times, you do have to surrender some preferences sometimes. You can't have it all your way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, so this in bed, as an example, if Melissa had rolled over and had closed to me, then I know what to do, because from the masculine to the feminine perspective, I know that I can soften her by giving her affection and love and touch, and slowly bring her around, open up. And of course, the ultimate is to change that situation from closed into a state of making love, because then it completely dissolves every concern in that moment.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first tool that we use a lot.
Can I ask you, when you say you were closed, and that's like very common in depression, do you feel that looking back now that you were closing off before you went into that state of depression and you just weren't aware of it?
I think to a degree, I think there was parts of me that were closing. I think those parts related to um, probably a level of resentment that I had for some things that I was doing in my own life. I
Right.
was getting involved in some pretty big projects at the time around film production and different things,
Yeah.
which were taking me away from making music. Now, I could
Right.
sell to myself every day of the week, but the film's a great project. It's for a good cause. You know, I can sort of justify a million ways, but when I take myself from my music, I do start to kind of shrivel up a little bit. And I
Yeah.
think I was doing that, and that sort of was one of the things that precipitated going to that state.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. 12 months is a really, really long time. Um, yeah, I know when my partner struggles for, more than a day or a few days, that already takes a huge toll on me. Like I feel, I know everyone's an empath, but that energy when I'm around someone who's working, who's like at a low vibration, that really, really affects me. But 12 months, I'd love to ask, like, what was the relationship like in that phase?
It was hard. It was hard because I physically didn't have a lot of energy as well. So even some of the basic things like lovemaking, like libido had dropped. So,
Totally.
these sorts of things really impact.
Totally.
Like for us personally, if we have ever any sort of grumpiness or irritability,
Mm-hmm.
it's usually because we've gone for a period of not making love longer than what's good for us.
Right.
And, whatever that period is for each couple, because it's different for everyone. Some people it's every day. Some
Right.
people it's once a week. Um, but we have our own sort of period that we're very familiar with, that we know that once we go beyond that, then things stop flowing as much. So
Are
our
you
relationship definitely.
are you sure you're not using sex or making love as reassurance that you love each other? Are you sure there's not an attachment to what that means?
Yeah, we've definitely questioned that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, I think what we've come to with the act of making love is that it's really just a way for us both to, in that moment, to be completely connected with nothing else
Yeah.
around us
Yeah.
that's distracting us.
Right.
And it's a way of us basically realigning our own energies together. So, during intercourse, of course, um, there's that yang essence going from the male to the female,
Yeah.
and the yin coming from the feminine to the masculine. And so those things obviously balance each other out a lot. Now,
Yeah.
I think every woman has their own, well, I know every woman has their own unique balance, right, of different energies in their bodies. um, One thing that's really balancing for Melissa is that yang. It
Yeah.
really balances her yin out. So I think at times it's definitely been used as a bit of as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
um, and I think we are aware of when we do that, but it's
Yeah.
definitely the minority, not the majority.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like, for example, for those 12 months were you going through that tough time, how was it for Melissa? Like, could you see that her, I don't know, her happiness or her high vibration went down quite significantly in those 12 months, or did it go down through phases? Like, how did that affect her life as a partner?
I would say it probably wasn't linear as such. It was more lumpy,
Okay.
and it meant she had to really dial up her own self-love, her own inner
Totally.
work that she was doing. She had to tap into more mentors and coaching and things that she normally doesn't have to do as much of. She really had to draw upon all the tools and resources she had.
Yeah.
And for her, there was times where she spent the night on the couch and was concerned about our relationship. I mean,
Aw,
for me personally, I'm never concerned about our relationship. I
right.
think it's a masculine thing.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like I just know, I'm like, she's my soulmate, it's all good, like no matter what happens, it
Right.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's not an excuse to be a jerk or an asshole.
Right. Right.
um, but it does give me peace of mind that when things go a bit off kilter, that we can always come back to center.
Yeah.
um, but it was really challenging for her, really challenging. And
Yeah.
there's nothing more rewarding, I think, as a couple to make it through those periods,
Totally.
you
Totally.
know
And when she was going through that dark phase after her best friend passed away, how did you keep yourself happy? Like, did you, I don't know. And I always wonder as well if there's a prolonged phase where someone's really stressed out about something, say it's their career or their job or their work, and you try helping them out and you say, "Hey, I'm aware that you're really stressed lately and it's really hard for me to be around you." I like my own personal experience, I got to a point where I almost wanted to distance myself because I tried helping and I tried communicating and they were closing. And I tried to open them up and try to figure out what's going on and said, like, let's find some tools that'll elevate your state. And when it doesn't work after a certain period of time, I feel super guilty because I have these thoughts, or I almost want to distance myself from them because I feel like that's the only way I can contain my happiness and my high vibration. And I don't want to go down on this low vibration because I feel so sorry for the other person. So how do you deal with living with someone, especially when you're in a relationship with someone and seeing them go through something like that? And like, do you have to just accept, okay, my vibration is going to be low with theirs? Or are
Mhm.
there ways around that?
I think it's inevitable that there will be moments where you attune with their energy,
Yeah.
because we're all human, we're not perfect. I mean,
Exactly.
we're perfectly imperfect, right? So um, yes, I think it's okay to be gentle with yourself and say, you know what, like I'm only human and I am syncing with their vibration right now, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. But that's not my truth, my reality right now. I do have the tools to go back to my own center.
Right.
And I think the easiest thing to remember in relationship as well is that if you want more love, right? Because when you're in these situations, there's less love
Yeah.
because that person is suffering and focused on themselves with a small s, right?
And
Instead of
there's
their
more
highest
fear.
self.
There's more feel and less fear and less love.
So much fear.
Yeah.
So if you want to spark that love, you just have to keep giving that love.
Yeah.
It's classic Gandhi. It's like, be the change you want to see in the world. If
Mm-hmm.
you want more love, you've got to give more love. And
Yeah.
so that comes back to always leading by example, because you just can't change anyone ever.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good your intentions are, you just can't.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
give love, you can remain in your center, and you can be the example, and hopefully by staying in your center, it inspires them to come back to theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Hugely.
I think being the inspiration point is more important than being the coach.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So what kind of tools did you use yourself um, when Melissa was going through a tough time? Like, yeah, what did you do to up your vibration? Was it always related with her? Like you tried making her happy and putting her in a happy space, and then when she was there, you were able to go with her? Or were you at different levels quite often where you were like, okay, I need to work on myself. I'm going to go do a meditation, or I'm going to go to the beach and I'm going to show gratitude and pick myself up while she's still depressed. And then that also makes me feel guilty as well when I'm like, okay, I'm just going to focus on myself, get myself aligned again. And then I'm like, oh, I'm still guilty because they're not aligned yet and they're still in their darkness. Like, what kind of practical tools did you actually use to get yourself through that period?
Yeah, again, I think for me, my own practices were more disciplined than usual
Okay.
because I needed them.
Yeah.
And I think you have to fill yourself up. You have to make sure that you're overflowing,
Right.
because you can't give from that state of being, depleted. You've got to give from a state of overflowing.
Yeah.
And you get to that state of overflowing by maintaining your practices. So,
Right.
I mean, for me, there's always just the basics:
Uh-huh.
meditation, daily meditation twice a day, 20 minutes. We do a Vedic or transcendental meditation style. And that's something which really has completely changed the entire trajectory of my life. I started doing Vedic meditation back in 2008.
Yep.
Um, and I was married to someone else, and that took me on a different path, and we ended up separating
Yeah.
because our paths completely diverged. I
Right.
wouldn't be where I am now without having that specific technique. And the
Wow.
reason I like that technique is because it's, in times of stress, it's a very effective way to throw the stress out of the body.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just about trying to quieten the mind, which is extremely challenging to do in the modern world, because if you're using a more monastic Buddhist style approach to meditation and you're focusing on, breath or, a single point of focus other than a mantra, then with all the noise we have around us, it's extremely challenging to do that.
Yeah.
So the reason I loved Vedic meditation was that it embraces thoughts. It
Yeah.
embraces thoughts as a sign that you are actually doing it correctly. You're releasing stress in the form of thoughts. And the stress could come through as thoughts. It could come through as a feeling of anxiety. It could come
Yeah.
through as a feeling of bliss, whatever.
Yeah.
The most important thing with my meditative practice was to never, ever judge an individual session as being good or bad. It just is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that practice was always the foundation of our relationship, really.
Yeah.
Not our relationship, sorry, it was the foundation of our joint practices, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
It brings us back to center on a regular basis, and we tend to do it together most days.
Yeah.
But during that period, she was still doing the meditation, but I could almost tell that the meditations weren't, they were effective to a degree, but you could see that she was still suffering through that. And the same for me.
Right.
When I was going through my challenging period, I would
Yeah.
meditate, but I'd still be suffering through the meditation.
Yeah. But did you
So,
also have a hard time suffering through your meditation when she wasn't in a good place? Not only when you were depressed.
I think I always found that as a moment of respite and peace.
Okay.
So, meditation, I think everyone knows that's
Yeah.
a powerful practice. Like,
Powerful.
I feel like I've been speaking about it for so long. And when I first started speaking about it, um, people thought I was weird. And that's only 12 years ago.
Yeah.
It just shows you how quickly things change, right? And things get adopted.
Yeah.
Um, for me, there were some basics of staying fit and strong. I mean, for me as a male with majority masculine energy, I feel best when I'm strong,
Yeah.
physically strong,
Yeah.
for whatever reason that fuels everything in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get injured like I am now with a bad knee from surfing, and I can't train as much, it
Yeah.
tends to, I can feel myself flattening out a little bit,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So there's some tools, some basic tools. We can meditate and take care of our mind, but we still have to take care of our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't just pretend that they don't exist and try and transcend all physical things, because we live in the third dimension. We need to take care of this body.
Yeah.
So staying strong is important. Of course, diet, the basics of diet and nutrition and sleep, of course,
Yeah.
super important.
Mm-hmm.
Just staying disciplined with these basic practices. But one of the big ones for me is always getting into nature.
Totally. Me too. Yeah.
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 Whether that's, for me, it's surfing or going for a walk are the two main things that I do.
Yeah. Ugh, the
Yeah.
ocean is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so inspiring to hear that. I wasn't sure how long your phase of depression was, but 12 months is crazy. And I want to give Melissa an applause. That's like just amazing that, yeah, that you survived that. And how was that time afterwards? Like, how did that feel when you came out of that? Were you like even on a higher ecstasy after having been through all that?
This is really interesting to us because we've started to observe a pattern that emerges with us.
Okay.
And the pattern is, one person will be going through a period of growth. Okay.
Yeah.
The other person's holding space for them. Then we tend to meet in the middle for a while,
Yeah.
but never like long as we like. And then it tends to reverse.
Right.
And it's
Interesting.
it's not always like suffering. It just might be, oh, okay, there's the next thing I'm going to work on. And it presents itself out
Right.
of the blue, like, wow, I didn't even know that was there. And here's this new thing I need to now work on. So it tends to alternate, but we have periods in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're
Uh,
definitely elevated.
I don't know if I want to
Definitely.
get too personal and ask you how long those periods last for, but
No, I think that not very long. I would say
yeah.
maybe a couple of months or something.
I wonder if there's some sort of subconscious reason for that, and this is just a total theory, that both of you might be unaware of, that when one of you is struggling, you feel like that's your validation of getting love. Like, oh, I'm struggling, therefore you don't have the time to struggle as well. Therefore, you need to be there for me. And now I'm better. And then the other partner's, oh, well, I need that validation back. I need to have that reassurance subconsciously. My inner child needs to know that you can nurture me when I'm down. And so it's kind of like this, like forwards and backwards. I had that one in my relationships.
Did you? Yeah, look, I'd say anything's possible. I I think tuning into it, it doesn't feel totally true to us because, for example, right now there are things like this. We're all working on stuff all the time,
Yeah.
right? So it's not like, let's say right now it was me that was being the supportive figure.
Okay.
I'm still working through my own stuff, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Um, it just might mean that my growth points aren't quite as big as the other person's growth points.
Mm-hmm.
And also to point out that during these periods, it's not just all like suffering. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
um, it's still up and down, in the sense that there is still a lot of love and beauty, and
Totally.
there's just moments where we acknowledge and are aware of someone is shifting something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that requires some level of support from the other
Yeah.
person. So it's not all bad.
Totally.
it's
Totally.
it's actually, we have an amazing relationship. We have a
Yeah.
lot of fun, a lot of play.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's interesting because our dynamics change half the time when we have my son with us. It's a different relationship.
Totally. Yeah. I understand that. That one of my partners has kids as well. And when they're in the house and then when they're not in the house, total different dynamic of a relationship.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So interesting. Um, I don't know if there's anything else I can ask you. Is there any? That's what another thing I want to say. I've heard in some of your podcasts before you talk about crystal clear communication and all these little things that you do to keep the relationship flowing when another person is struggling. Can you talk a bit about that, like the crystal clear communication and slowing down and asking how the other person feels, and like a bit of tips like that?
Yeah, I think this is another thing which Melissa sort of coined in her book,
Totally.
Open Wide. And to be honest, the reason they went into her book is because we were using these tools already, and we sort of,
Yeah.
I guess, intuitively started using these things and just put a name to them, really.
Right.
Um, and so, crystal clear communication is really about, in those moments, is communicating from a place of love, really.
Yeah.
Because if you come from the head, you get met with the head. If you come from the heart, you get met with the heart, hopefully. Usually that's how it works.
Yeah.
um Very hard, and it's very hard to be met with the head when you give from the heart. And
Right.
so for me, depending on what the topic is, if it's something very sensitive, I might need to be much more aware and conscious about how I approach it.
Right.
So that might look like me saying, hey, look, I'd really like to sit with you and sit down and have a really honest conversation about something that's important to me right now.
Yeah.
And we tend to call it a love bubble.
Yeah.
So the love bubble is where
See, I love the little names that you put on these things. I love them. They're so good.
well, it helps because you develop a framework,
Yeah.
um, and that framework, once you have names and you can see it, you can then use it easier.
Exactly.
Do you know
Exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So the love bubble is where you basically, this is how we do it. We face each other, usually sitting on the bed, and we sometimes hold hands or sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
But the person who initiates it gets to talk uninterrupted for as long as they want.
Yeah.
The other person cannot respond.
Yeah. That's
And
very
then
powerful and
it
important
is,
not to escalate things. Yeah.
well, especially for in heterosexual relationships, in for the feminine to be heard.
Yeah.
And often that's it. It ends there. The feminine feels heard, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because the masculine wants to figure things out.
Yeah.
Like we're like the mechanics of the relationship. We want to like get in there with our tools and like deconstruct it.
Yeah.
The feminine doesn't want that.
Well, if you're
The
dating a
feminine
smart
just,
woman too, she might already know the answer. She might already know what to do for herself. She just wants you to listen.
well, I think all women do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when they're given the space to express, then the answer emerges anyway.
Right.
So let's say Melissa was expressing to me in a love bubble. Let's say she'd spoken for 10 minutes nonstop.
Yeah.
And then when I feel like she has stopped, I would say, is there anything else you'd like to add? Right. So you're literally drawing everything out of it.
Right.
And if she says no, there's either something that needs to be responded to or not, because it may have just resolved itself
Right.
by being heard.
Yeah.
So the love bubble's been a really interesting one. And it usually comes out when there are bigger things to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And it just means every time you work through one of these things in a relationship, you get to a new height, like a new plane, a new experience, a new
Totally.
level of respect, admiration, love,
Yep.
intimacy,
Yep.
because you're removing these layers.
Yeah.
So, these sorts of practices are important for us because it allows us to keep growing as a couple
Yeah.
and never feeling stagnant or bored or, because my own physical relationship with Melissa intensifies year after year as opposed to diminishing because I
Mm-hmm.
discover more about her. I fall more in love
Yeah.
with her because I have more respect. I get to see the way that she shows up when I'm down. So I have more love and admiration and respect for her. So I fall more in love with her.
Totally. I totally get that.
And so I think these tools are important because it allows you to grow. And whether you're married or just in a monogamous or non-monogamous relation, whatever it is, there's this beautiful container when you do have a partner that you live with.
Yeah.
And that container really affords you one of the, if not the best opportunity for growth that you'll ever get in your life is to be in partnership with someone.
Yeah. So true.
Because you have a very shiny mirror who's always reflecting back your stuff at you.
Yeah.
And if you respect the sacredness of that container and you don't try and run away from it when things get
Mhm.
tough,
Or blame, point the finger.
or yeah, point the finger or play tit for tat, if you respect it, then you are saying to the universe that you are ready. Like you're here, you're showing up, you're ready to grow.
Hmm.
And I must say that, marrying Melissa was the easiest thing I ever did, but one of the most challenging too, because it means I can't just be average Nick.
Right.
And in those moments where I just want to, be really human and just maybe suffer a little about something or procrastinate on something. And
Right.
she's like,
Right.
do you think, Nick, that maybe now's a good time to be such and such, and she'll
Right.
make a suggestion. It's very hard to escape.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's been amazing for me as a person because I love who I am now much more than I did before I met Melissa.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that you hold those standards on yourself too. And that it's not your partner always being like, hey, show up, that you also have awareness of that yourself, how you're showing up. That's
Yeah, and I
beautiful.
think as well for the masculine. The masculine, it's very important that they have a very strong mission.
Right. Right.
Like it's part of what masculine energy is all about. It's about being directional and firm and, being on a path.
Yeah.
And when that starts to fizzle out, if a man who is majority masculine starts to lose sight of their mission and go off path, the feminine feels that
Hmm.
straight away. And it
Hmm.
starts to erode that beautiful polarity that we have.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, my mission is music, full stop. Like I know exactly what it is. I've got other things that I do as well, but music for me is the one which, if I don't do it, I honestly feel like I'm shriveling into nothing.
Right. Why am I
And
here?
it's like, that's what I'm here for. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I get that totally. I feel like that's really important for a female as well, though, in some sense, to have a
it is.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's different for example. I think today is tricky for a lot of women because in an insta perfect world, um, there could be a stay-at-home mother who really is quite fulfilled with being a stay-at-home mother,
that's
but
what I
then
want to
sees,
be.
yeah,
Goals, goals for me. Yeah,
yeah, 100%.
yeah,
And then, but other stay-at-home mothers may see other stay-at-home mothers doing other great big things in the world and think, but I should be doing this and I should be doing that. So it's really important for the feminine to also just acknowledge what that thing is that lights them up the most, whether it is being a mother, whether it's being a mother and something else, whether it's not having children and being on a different mission and embracing more of the masculine energy.
yeah,
It doesn't really matter. Everyone's got their own path.
yeah, yeah,
And it's really important just to be gentle with yourself, especially now, today's day and age, where everyone compares themselves to other people.
totally, totally. A lot of people, not everyone, but a lot.
A lot of, yeah, I shouldn't use blanket statements,
Yeah,
but yes,
totally.
a lot of people do compare, and some people just have no interest in that,
Yeah,
and are not affected by it.
yeah, exactly.
um
Or you can
which is,
choose to be
I think,
inspired by it as well, or just say, cool,
totally.
that's their path. I'm happy for them.
Yeah, and I feel really inspired. Like I actually quite enjoy social media.
No, me too.
um
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, we wouldn't have met without it, and
yeah.
I use it as a tool. I only follow mainly musicians.
I know, I love that actually. You're probably one of the only people I know who has like thousands and thousands of followers and you follow like what, 30 people? I love that.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it always down below 20 is my goal, but
Oh, okay. Mine is around the 100 mark. Like try to not
yeah.
get more than 100. Yeah.
Well, I sort of developed sort of obsessions with, not obsessions, but real fascination with different people, whether it's a producer or an artist, or even um, like I'm really interested in plant-based bodybuilding. Not that I'm a bodybuilder, I just love
Right.
I love seeing what men can do on a plant-based diet.
Totally.
So I follow like one plant-based bodybuilder.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
the
yeah.
random one that's thrown in there.
Yeah.
Um, it just reminds me of my own inherent strength.
Mm.
And it changes, like I have, for a while there, I was following someone like Billie Eilish, right?
Yeah.
Because I thought what she had created in the world was so fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, but now it's more her brother, Phineas, he's a producer, and I
Okay.
find his world more fascinating now.
Right.
Um, but I think Instagram's really a beautiful tool
Totally.
if used correctly. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of people, do struggle with it as a tool.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, definitely, there's a lot of comparison going on, which
Yeah.
is only
A
natural,
lot
I
of
think.
people just stay away from it because they don't know, I guess, how to use it as a tool, how to see it
Yeah.
as that it could be a beneficial thing to their lives. So some people are like, oh, it makes me feel bad. I just don't want to, but that's fine.
So
We
would you?
have other tools.
So, a question for you: would you, if you didn't have a career doing what you do now, you have a podcast and the things you do, would you be on social media still?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
don't know if I would if I wasn't a musician.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
think I would be off
Right.
completely.
Yeah. No, I follow really interesting people and like all different facades of me because we're all multifaceted. So like
Right.
I follow, yeah, just very diverse people, and it's good because then I get a mix of things. It's not just all the same thing. It's not just all spiritual people who are talking about meditation. It's like, a mix of some kinky stuff and dancing and yeah, just a whole bunch of things. And I love that. I love that because there are different parts of me. So yeah, I see it as like an inspiration almost like, oh yeah, like, oh, I'm gonna bring more of that and I feel more like this person today or this person this week or whatever phase I am in life. So yeah, I love it for that.
And I wonder whether that's also um, because I see how Melissa uses it compared to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally different. There's
Right.
much more engagement from her end than there is from mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not one to scroll.
Yeah. I like
You
stories.
know?
I don't scroll, but the stories, like I want to see what's real, what's live. I want to see you in your bedroom or in your kitchen. What does your house look like? Yeah. Whereas
Right.
posts are a bit more like posing at a beach or something. So yeah, I love the
Yeah.
stories. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that love bubble thing as well. And you put a name on that yourself, or did you learn about that as called the love bubble?
Actually, that was passed on to us from a Buddhist psychotherapist.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Cool. I love that.
just
No,
as a tool.
that's so helpful. I'm definitely going to incorporate that in my relationship.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you literally can dissolve anything.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Even just hearing about it, I know how powerful that would be if people actually do it and they remember as well before they get, heated to say, hey.
And respecting the non-response. So you lay the
Yeah.
rules every time. Remember, I'm going to speak,
Hmm.
and you're going to let me speak
Yeah. Do you
until I'm
feel for
complete.
you it works the same way it does for Melissa sometimes, where you just are able to talk and then you kind of resolve things just from talking and then it's over?
Yes, I do. I think there's
Yeah.
been one time where I was triggered
Yeah.
going into one, and I was responding.
Mm,
So that didn't work very well.
right.
But look, it's only something we've used maybe 3 or 4 times, but every time it's helped us move through something that was causing friction in the house
Totally.
and in our relationship. Um, so it's been really effective for us.
Yeah.
Um, but I think as well, what's interesting is you take that lesson into your normal conversations as well.
Right. Right.
So you don't have to do it in the love bubble situation. You start
Yeah.
recognizing when someone has something to say, and you start
Mhm.
listening much longer,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
interesting
Before
as
butting
well.
in. Yeah. And that's hard when you think you're right. But I'm right. They just don't see it. But that's always what each person feels.
Is there a thing that comes up for you in your relationship where it's you feel, is there a recurring thing where you feel right and someone else is
um,
wrong?
yeah, I've always had that.
Have
Sounds
you?
so bad. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And do you
And
think,
but there are times I'm very black and white. Like there are times where I'm totally like, okay, I don't know what the F is going on, and I admit that. So I'm never like, I think I'm right, but maybe I'm not. I'm very like, I don't know what's going on, and I'll admit it, and I'll say, I'm triggered right now. I'm feeling insecure. Hold space for me to be like, you know, who texted you or whatever. And then I have other times where I'm like, okay, I know you're being triggered and you're not admitting it right now and you're getting defensive. And I guess it kind of like, it feeds my like, oh, I feel like I'm right now, because a lot of times after 8 hours or a day, my partner will come around and be like, oh, what you said actually was true, and I didn't want to admit it because I was being defensive. But my other partner, I don't have that with, so it's just one of them. The other partner,
Yeah, so
I'm more like, he's right with one of them, and then the other one, I'm like, I'm right. So
right.
yeah,
Which is probably natural because they're different dynamics, right?
totally. And
And
that's what I love. It's like it pulls out a different side of you. It's like, yeah, so interesting. So interesting.
yeah, so Melissa often will say, we're not having an adult conversation right now, so I'm just going to walk away.
Yeah,
And then when you're ready to speak like an adult to me, I'm here for you.
I do that
Because I
too.
might start a conversation. You know what that's like, right? I might start a
Yeah,
conversation where I'm heated straight away.
totally.
And
Yeah.
that's not a good place to start any conversation from.
Yeah.
Because that's all head, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or something's interpreted wrong. So I might say like, hey, I think, or I feel when you did this, it made me feel this way. And then they'll
Right.
get triggered or they'll interpret it the wrong way. And then they'll be like, but what do you mean? Like, what are you trying to say? And you're like, I'm just laying out how I feel. And they're like, but what are you trying to say? And it's like, calm down. It's okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah. But now you have this love bubble concept. You can,
Mm,
even in those moments, you don't have to necessarily do the love bubble. You can experiment in the next sort of minor little thing of trying
yeah.
to use that concept
Yeah. I love
and
that.
see what happens.
Do you believe that, I guess, for anyone and also for you, do you believe you can get to a stage in life where that phase where you're both not struggling? I don't want to say not struggling with anything. Like, obviously, you're always learning, but personally, I hold the belief that you don't always need to struggle in order to learn. I believe you
Yeah.
can learn through joy and happiness. Do you believe that you or other people can get to a stage where the relationship is just like super high vibe, like 99.9% of the time? Hey YouTube fam, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button below. And if you think a friend, a family member, or just someone you know who could benefit from this podcast episode, please share this video with them. And if you've been enjoying the Elevate Your Soul podcast, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for new episodes weekly.